Hey, everybody, this is David Bloom. Welcome to Next TMT. I'm a co founder of Next TMT Talks This Here podcast with my co founder, Daniel Frankel. We talk all things technology, media, and telecom. Lots going on, it seems like, every week, including this one. Netflix had good earnings. Market don't care. Ted Sarandos says don't sleep on YouTube TV, though. It's real TV. The Super Bowl matchup is set. I'm looking forward, I think Dan probably is too, to some pretty eye-popping ratings for two great games. And we'll look forward to seeing what Charter is doing to its former partners in reselling. It looks like they may be trying to kill them off. And not all is well in immersive land with a big meta pullback, but the Sphere is clicking its ruby heels over a wizardly box office venture. With that, let's get into it, Dan. So let's get started. You got a little essay at the top of the newsletter, which comes out on Monday mornings too, free to everybody at nexttmt.com, talking about is Larry Ellison extending an Orwellian surveillance state across America now that he's got 15% of TikTok to go with CBS News. Go.
Well, it sounds a little hyperbolic to put it that way, but yes,
Here's what
I
I
believe he
found.
is.
It is a little hyperbolic. We may want to slightly adjust that headline, but it's they certainly they're accreting. Let's just say it is fair to say they're accreting a number of notable media outlets of various types.
Let me just back up. Under Biden, this is in 2024, it was a bipartisan effort to pass the Protecting Americans from Foreign Adversaries Controlled Applications Act, which basically said
By the
that
way, great name. That was
it was hard to say. It basically mandated that the ByteDance, the Chinese owner of TikTok, divest its U.S. operation or get out of the country. So Trump made a deal for TikTok's U.S. assets to be divided up among a group of three companies or investment companies. One was an Abu Dhabi controlled investment firm called MGX. The other is Silver Lake, which is a big tech investor. And then there's Oracle, which is owned by Larry Ellison.
and it's fair to say has been operating TikTok's US operations for a few years, I think. I mean, they've been the system operator in terms of like computers and stuff like the servers and all that. So they've been doing it for a little while.
Now they have an ownership stake.
Now,
Why I think that's concerning is Larry Ellison has been on record. He's on video in numerous locations talking about the wonders of ubiquitous video cameras and AI and how we'll be watched all the time in the future and people won't do anything bad because they know they're being watched. The cops won't do anything bad because they know they're being watched. Everything will be immediately, thanks to AI, reported to the local sheriff. You're in great hands.
this is a panopticon, Jeremy Bentham's vision of major reforms in the prison system in the 80s, I believe it was. A panopticon where everybody's watched all the time. I think he's probably a bit overly optimistic given some of the events in Minnesota and the, shall we say, varying interpretations of the same video by
Varying interpretation.
different people.
Just because you
Yes.
see it doesn't mean others want you to believe it. So this could go badly. Maybe the headline's hyperbolic, but I don't think we're on the wrong track here.
It is worth noting, I just want to say that London is a lot closer to the Ellison ideal. They have something like 1 million surveillance cams all over the city, which makes for great TV when you're trying to track down the latest terrorists blowing up, say, the tube or buses or whatever.
Right.
I'm not sure it stops everything. AI can help.
Well,
They actually use things. This is what I found fascinating. So AI facial recognition is really good, but they were using for a long time super recognizers, people who have the ability to recognize faces at a far higher level. I'm like the opposite of that. I'm a hypo recognizer. It's like I don't see faces well, but these people can like see that's somebody that is this person over. We saw in the crime sheets, the mug shots and all that. So they were using that. Now they're going to go to facial recognition. I don't think that London's better.
Other like heavily video recorded markets in Europe. But what they don't have, according to Larry, is AI in the centralization of the data. That's what he's calling for. We need gobs of data centralized. So the government has it all, and we can apply AI to it, and it'll tell us anything at all times. So that's how we protect ourselves and keep ourselves safe.
Well, for what it's worth, there's a new movie coming out with Chris Pratt called Mercy that basically posits where this could go. So it's an AI judge, Chris Pratt. It's a ridiculous premise, but just watch the trailer if you want to. Mercy, and the AI judges him guilty of murdering his wife. He has 90 minutes to prove he didn't murder his wife, or he gets executed. So a little ticking clock drama there, but it does suggest where some of this could go and sort of automating justice and all that, and that's not great, I don't think. To switch from Larry's Orwellian impulses to the thing his son is trying to do, Netflix, their competition to buy Warner Brothers Discovery, had their earnings call on Tuesday. It was a very good earnings call. I think their revenues were up 18% year over year. Their margin is creeping up another 2 points, and they're heading toward, according to Tom Rogers, the former longtime head of CNBC and now a special advisor to Versant, they're on their way to 40% margins, which is like, wow. But the market said, we don't care, and promptly whacked them again. They're down 30 some odd dollars a share from where they were right before the deal was announced. And Ellison's folks have extended their tender offer till February 20th, another month almost. And they're going to go do a proxy fight to try to get some of their guys on the board. So they're throwing everything in the kitchen sink at this to try to fend off Netflix. You have some thoughts, I think, about all of that.
I already stated in our midweek edition of this podcast, we talked about this some more, and I just thought, since their stock tanked on what was a perfect earnings call, like you could in the parlance of the president, it tanked anyway. And how long can it sustain this? Ever you do everything right, your stock is down 5% or wherever it was. Will their investors have patience if this drags on for 18 months? Will they have patience with Netflix management? It just seems like an anchor that they might lose will to sustain. That's the thought that I had. At the same time, I thought it was interesting. It seems like Netflix is trying to hurry Paramount along and just make Ellison up his ante past $30. Force him
Oh,
into.
yeah. Yeah, he's got to go. He's going to need to materially improve to, like, I don't know, 35 a share. And it's like, well, a buck or two is not going to make much difference. Because one of the things that Netflix said that was a really crucial number, I mean, stock prices matter to companies overall. These guys aren't going anywhere. Everybody knows they're well situated. The key number to me was how many shareholders have already tendered their stock to Paramount in the hostile tender offer. And according to Netflix, I mean, according to Warner Brothers Discovery, it's between 6 and 7%, which is not a lot. That suggests not a lot of enthusiasm for this deal. I think they're all thinking they're going to get a second payday when the Discovery part gets sold, which would get sold before the Warner Brothers thing gets sold under the Netflix approach. But the key part is people aren't so far, and maybe that'll change, lining up to tender their shares to the Paramount side.
Yeah, there's a lot of discrepancy in opinion of what that's worth. I mean,
that's a real thing, though. You tender the offer, or you tender your shares. I mean, you're saying I'm willing to sell my shares to you. I mean, that's what it boils down to. Do you have control or likely control of all these shares? And if you don't, and you're going to extend the offer for a second time for another month, you're just hoping everybody changes their mind. Like, you're going to need to do something more, and they haven't. So, meanwhile, Ted Sarandos.
He's got big problems like YouTube, as he went off on describing.
Oh, he had a good thing to say. I think that this was a strategic thing, but he had a lengthy quote about, BBC's doing original series for him, and they're running. It's not just cat videos; it's all this other stuff. And this is real TV. And I think that that's true, but I think it's also strategic in saying to our beloved regulators in Washington, D.C. and beyond, that there are real competitors like TikTok and like YouTube.
Well, maybe that matters there. I mean, when trying to frame it in a policy regulatory frame, whether YouTube is TV or not, that matters. But man, the amount of navel gazing over that, of course, you lean back and you watch it. It's on your television set. It's video programming. There's plenty of long form to go along with the UGC stuff. So I don't really understand the amount of that hand wringing. I mean, of course it is. And it's very popular and it's a huge problem for premium video.
Well, because it beats things like worrying about the state of democracy or what's happening in Ukraine, I suppose. But it is a big company that reaches millions and millions of people. I mean, actually, close to a billion people, according to their numbers, also released during their quarterly earnings. They finally updated their subscriber numbers, 325 million. They said that translates to close to a billion people if you do the sort of typical household multiplier. And where I come from, that's a big number. But let's move on. One of Netflix's good buddies is Roger Goodell over at the Super Bowl, the NFL technically, but the Super Bowl matchups are set. This weekend, I think you were sitting there luxuriating in the victory of your Seattle Seahawks over the Los Angeles Rams, who actually have a stadium about 4 miles from your house. But yet you like the place where the coach that used to be there 2 coaches ago used to coach.
Well, they abandoned me. They moved to St. Louis, Anaheim first, and St. Louis, as you
Yeah,
recall.
different
And
owners, but yes.
we had to use there was a 20-year gap where there was no professional football in Los Angeles. We were bereft, abandoned, left behind, unloved, uncared for,
I'm kind
unappreciated.
of used to that though, so it wasn't a big deal to me.
Yeah, me too. And so, yeah, Pete Carroll went to Seattle. It seemed like a good time. They went on an epic run, and now they're back.
Not
So,
with Pete
yeah,
though. Pete's already gone and gotten fired by another team. So love Pete, love Pete. Good luck to Pete. He's 72. I think maybe
in a less issue-oriented space that's not sports, I'd argue that, but I'll stick to the plan. I think it's gonna be
fandom is beyond reason. And who am I to question your unreasoning affiliation with one team over another? It just is. It's
that
like
20
saying I don't like wind. It's like, okay.
the 2015, 2016 Seattle, New England, Belichick versus Pete Carroll Super Bowl was epic. The Seahawks didn't come out on the right side of the scoreboard, but it's one of the historic games. I'm
Yeah.
sure it'll be
That was a decade ago. Just throwing that out there.
I'm sure it'll be,
When you were a wee lad. Actually, your wee lads were wee lads. That's actually really was. But it'll be good. The thing that we care about here in XTMT, though, Winter Storm Fern blanketed, and that's a very intentional verb I used, 2/3 of the population of the United States with bitter cold, heavy winds, lots of snow, sleet, depending on where you were, really miserable weather. And the thought that I had, and I suspect you have, is that that's probably going to lead to some pretty darn good ratings for these two pretty high profile games, which are already going to get really good ratings. I'm just really curious how much better they might be because no one's going anywhere, right? Except in
football's
California where
already,
it's beautiful.
yeah,
What?
football ratings are already on fire right now. You mentioned in the column the national championship for college football last week. It did quite well.
Yeah, it was the best in how long? Like 12
Years, so
years?
they fourth game.
Yeah. So college working, the top level college game working. Speaking of which, powers that be in college have figured out next year's college football playoff system. And it's a $1.3 billion payday that gets split up by the various participating conferences. A lot of money. And they
Right.
agreed to a new deal. And I find this interesting because, it's going to stay at 12 teams, but the money's going to get split in a different way so that the Big Ten and the SEC get the lion's share of the dough because they're probably going to have more of the teams. And I thought that was really interesting that the other conferences agreed to that. And to some extent, I think that was just to keep the SEC and the Big Ten from stomping off and just doing their own damn thing.
The
And
Atlantic Coast
I'm guessing that
conferences, I
was
mean,
that.
they had Miami in the big game on Monday, and it wasn't that long ago that Clemson was in the game. I'm surprised they acquiesced to that.
The ACC's got lots of challenges. They've got a grant of rights that was unduly long and unduly low, and they were stuck with that, which is why Clemson and Florida State have been suing to dissolve the current grant of rights. I think it goes to like 38 or 2040. I mean, it's kind of insane that they did this a number of years ago. So it was a very long period, and it looked like a pretty good deal. 2012 or whenever it was that they did it. It doesn't look like a good deal now because everybody else is getting much higher rights. And this has now locked this in. I think some of this is they just didn't want to get left behind. Yes, Miami put on a great show, had a great run. The U is back, baby, blah, 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 blah. Michael Irvin has some place to work out his inner demons, which is great. Don't want him out on the streets, but
Actually, I encourage you to watch the Dallas Cowboy documentary on Netflix. It's about the Jerry Jones era.
yeah, the triplets, right? Irvin, Aikman, and Emmett. Yeah.
It's basically about Jerry Jones. It's really some Jimmy Johnson. But what you develop is a respect for Michael Irvin. The way he conducted his vice was kind of responsible. He never drove anywhere. The prostitutes he surrounded himself were always professional and of age, and none of
And they
them.
were just paying to get through college. I totally get it.
They weren't even college age. They were like adults who talked about how courteous everybody was and how well they were treated. And he just said, I needed this after a 9-month season. And
Yeah.
ultimately, anyway, watch it. You'll come away with a new respect for Michael Irvin. I didn't realize how important he was to that team. And
Oh my goodness. Yeah, he was a Hall of Famer. I mean, usually when you're in the Hall of Fame, you're doing something right. That's all I'm going to say. And they won a couple three Super Bowls, I think, 2 Super Bowls. Anyway, very good team. But I am interested in football.
Your point in the column about college football, you compare the ratings of the SEC, which expanded recently, to the Big Ten, which also expanded, and they're at parity at one point a couple years ago, and the SEC pulls away.
In terms of ratings for the average game, regular season game, they were roughly flat. It was a little bit better for the SEC, but it was roughly flat. But now, not so much. I mean, the difference now, the delta now is substantial. It's like a 70% higher ratings or 80%. I mean, it's a lot. And to some extent, I think it's because the way the Big Ten expanded, 4 West Coast teams to go with the 2 East Coast teams they added a number of years ago, Rutgers and Maryland, on top of their, upper Midwest roots, created this national beast that was huge and ungainly, but had all these different major markets across the country. And that should translate to big ratings. It was supposed to translate to big ratings, and it didn't. It didn't.
We had 12 teams that were the probably the most rabid fan bases. But even still, there are so many entertainment choices for USC, UCLA, even Oregon and Washington. I mean, they're just not the same type of attendance and ratings draw that I think that Texas and Oklahoma, which the SEC added. So,
but also they're right next door. If you want to have fans show up, it's a drive from Austin to LSU, to Baton Rouge, but it ain't terrible. And it's certainly not like flying from Seattle to Washington, D.C. to see the Huskies play the Maryland Terrapins, which was a game. This was what was insane for the poor kids of the UW team. One week, they fly to Maryland and play. The next week, Rutgers, which is right up the road, flies to them. And then the next week, they got to fly back to not quite the East Coast, but another, like they got to go back and forth. I mean, it was like they're a business consultant for McKinsey or something. It was crazy. Those numbers are just insane.
I also think, the nature of the Big Ten, you've got, as I made the point, I don't know if Vanderbilt's a pretty good school academically in terms of reputation. And
it's probably the best in the South, actually. Rice is up there and a couple of others, but it's probably as good as it gets in the South. My aunt and her husband, my beloved Uncle Joe, both went to Vandy, and it is a great academic school. And better than anything else, I got to say, in the SEC.
Michigan,
better than anything else.
UCLA, even USC, which has gotten better in recent years. These are I don't know that and I think the alumni and the fan bases maybe they have a more diverse interests. They're a little more broadly spread out and maybe a little bit more have broader interests than the folks that have more rabidity for football down south. And I don't mean to denigrate, because I certainly have.
But this is beyond. This is just, see, you're saying that it's only going to be alumni that are going to watch these games. And the real point is, if you want to get numbers, it's not going to be Joe alum watching the show. It's going to be somebody who likes football and says, that's a good matchup. I want to see Texas play Georgia, or I want to see Vanderbilt's really pretty good now, so I want to see Texas play Vandy, or I want to see LSU. There are fewer weak teams, and they beat the crap out of each other. And by the time they get to the postseason, there's not a whole lot left, but there's just a lot more interesting matchups. There are plenty of interesting matchups in the Big Ten within those core heavyweight, Michigan,
Oregon,
Ohio State,
Indiana was
blah, blah, blah.
fantastic.
Yeah. And Indiana came out of nowhere. Great. God bless them. Oregon's a great program. USC's coming back. UW's pretty solid. But the point is, there's a lot of crummy programs there. Michigan State can't get out of its way, and so on and so forth. So the ratings show what fans think of those matchups. That's my real point. Fans don't think that a lot of those matchups are very good, and
I
they're
would also
much
add
more likely to
the
watch the other one.
having your main contract, your national contract on ESPN, where it's football 24/7 in the fall and winter, as opposed to CBS, NBC might also be a factor. But
And Fox,
yeah,
don't forget it's three networks. So possibly just trying to figure out where your game is, what day part of Saturday, what network is it going to be on is a challenge. So
well,
maybe
got
that's
good
it.
news for you, or bad news, depending on how you feel about it. When you wake up tomorrow, you'll have a new newspaper, a new sports section. Keep up with all this. News Corp, Rupert Murdoch's one of his companies, is launching the California Post, which is determined to make some noise out here in Southern California. It's going to be available at 678 retail locations in Los Angeles and San Diego. What's left of the newsstands and liquor stores, etc. I guess, at a price of $3.75, and they hope to get a big portion or all of the 7.3 million Californians who read the edgy New York Post. We've already hired up a bunch of people. They've poached some local newspaper and magazine talent from the places like the LA Times and Penske Media.
Yeah.
Breitbart
Yeah, you
editor.
mentioned Tatiana Siegel, a very well respected, Bulldog reporter, worked for Hollywood Reporter, and she's going over, and she's certainly a solid, solid, solid person. And your former employer at a different venue used the opportunity to say, hey, she's leaving, to say crappy things about her, which was inappropriate for her to do that about Tatiana. I thought I agree with you on that one. I'm deeply puzzled by this strategy because
I think,
Patrick Soon-Shiong put a whole bunch of money in to try to get the LA Times going, and nobody noticed. And the Times actually had a 500,000, 400,000 subs, and had a
well,
presence here.
I think Patrick Soon-Shiong should have stuck to scalpels and medical technology, because I think he just, I judge him as kind of clueless. And Rupert Murdoch, in terms of running media businesses and gaining audiences, I think he knows what the hell he's doing. So maybe a little bit of that. Like, this is a huge, densely populated market with a lot of college educated people in it, and some conservatives and libertarians. Let's move and see what it can do. I think there's also political goals. I think they see tweaking Gavin Newsom at a surging time as kind of a good cultural duty to perform, maybe. I don't know.
That is the only. It's like it's a backdoor sort of anti-contribution, right? We're gonna soak up some money over. Maybe we're gonna make some. I can't imagine at a time when we've lost 3,000 newspapers in the last 15 years, tens of thousands of newspaper jobs, selling a new publication in 678 physical outlets for $3 and change is going to be a big money winner. And like, who's your advertisers? Because that's 3/4 of your revenue is probably going to come from advertising. And, tabloids have their charm when you're trying to grapple with these things on a subway. I ride the light rail lines. I wrote about the construction of the subways and light rail lines in Southern California 30 years ago. I like those things, but I'm not sitting there trying to read a physical copy, and there's no newsstand at the station where I could get it. So tell me
Well, there'll
how
be a
this is
robust
and
marketing
how much
strategy.
money you're going to spend to get people to know that it even exists beyond, of course, the vast readership that we command, and that you have advised it's now available. You're doing your part for Rupert, and Rupert thanks you. He'll remember you in his new will. Probably
Really?
not. No, not holding my breath on that one. He bought
So,
off his children that were going to make his company's less conservative. He bought them out for about 1.1 billion each after losing a big fight in the Nevada probate court when he wanted to change his irrevocable trust to revocable.
Vanity Fair described this as his last gas to conquer Hollywood. This is his last big quest. Listen, publishing is
Boy,
pretty sleepy. I think Penske it feels like the energy is sort of dissipated a little bit. There's a jaundiced eye cast that way quite a bit. Patrick Soon-Shiong is trying to sell or publicly divest the paper, put out
or at least a poor.
an
I
offer.
think he's only doing a stake in it, right? It's like 500 million, which is not nothing, but it's
Right.
like
It also
forty
contains his
percent or
video
something.
game company. He has an esports company and a couple other assets he's selling. And there's a website. It's in our newsletter. You can look at it. And if you have 500 million or even 250 million or 250 bucks,
Who are we to
send his way.
judge? Yeah, right. Send it his way. He's feeling. I am busy trying to figure out his last gasp. Rupert's 94 now. I think he's been gasping for a long time and still going. I think he's on wife 7 or 8. It's so hard to keep track. But this newspaper deal feels like there's something else going on. Saying it's in February of the midterms, and I want to get in the way of the annoyingly handsome and slick Gavin Newsom, who's been pretty aggressive about pushing back on some of Trump's initiatives. Maybe, but boy, it's a really expensive way to do that with not a lot of obvious opportunities. I'll just say that. It could happen.
Well,
If I was using prediction markets, I would not be putting my bet on Rupert's side, even if he does absolutely know how to make business go. Because remember, the New York Post does not make money. It loses money. It's
I have
a
not
big
seen
sum.
an expenditure figure. I have seen that the ambition was 80 to 100 reporters in the newsroom.
Staff is a good sized
Copy
staff,
editor.
for that. But again, the parent
It's not like
post
newspaper.
doesn't make money. How can a new one in a new location with no history of tabloids, no obvious? I mean, how much of that is just like New York expats trying to, read page 6? And what's going to be different on page 6 in New York versus page 6 here? Two fewer pieces about annoying PR heavyweights in New York getting in trouble or something. I mean, like, what's that going to be?
Well, the
More sports.
editor in chief, Nick Paps, says there's no immediate pressure for profitability. So
Good
maybe it's
thing.
purely Rupert's 94 and he wants to keep the Republicans in power. He's made his peace with Donald Trump. It was the whole calling Arizona early thing back in the 2020 election and got between them, but maybe they're over it. And his goals are less monetary. I don't know.
Well, they need to be less monetary. So clearly, then you want to figure out, okay, what's the old dude up to? So we'll find out. I wrote a little bit
Hey, are
about
you going to see the Melania?
what?
Are you going to see the Melania movie? It
Well,
comes
yeah,
out
I'm
next
still
week.
waiting to see that one, boy. Brett Ratner directed it. It's got like 5 million and projected for opening
Yet
weekend.
Amazon MGM paid $40 million for it, and
Again,
it's tracking to make.
that was essentially a backdoor make Don happy thing. Make Melania
Yeah.
happy and Donald Trump is happy, or at least he's less stressed about when she's going to be mean to him again. 40 million, I don't think, was based on any projection of money making opportunities. I thought these guys were supposed to be all about good business. And it's like, okay, well, if the good business is just sucking up to Don, okay, well, that's what you're doing. We get it. Okay.
Well, it could backfire. I mean, the guy hates more than bad ratings and probably bad box office. And if this thing really lays an egg and there's a lot of bad press on it, Mr. Bezos could be under an unfavorable light at the resolute
Yeah, but
desk of the Oval Office.
yeah, maybe. He's not buying anything and he's not even running the company anymore. He's just a majority. I mean, he's not even a majority shareholder anymore. I don't think he's got like his ex-wife has a bunch of stuff. Now he votes her shares when it comes time for like proxy fights. But Andy Jassy runs the place. Jeff Bezos is not the guy who runs it anymore. So what are you going to do? You're going to like keep Amazon from like what? I don't know. I mean, they've been pretty creative at finding ways to put pressure on folks that you didn't anticipate through regulatory levers of various kinds. I don't know. They already look. They're going to lose money on it. There's no way they're not going to lose money on it. It's just that's not going to get them out. But it's a vanity project. Not that different, I got to say, in many ways. Though the price paid is different. It is not that different from a bunch of. I mean, my spouse and I watched the two-part, very lengthy but quite enjoyable Mel Brooks documentary on HBO Max last night. It was Judd Apatow directed it. Apatow started interviewing comics when he was like 13 years old, and he's like 50 now. And he's just been a guy who's had conversations with people like Mel Brooks for a very long time, and he does a good job. And of course, you've got cut clips of Young Frankenstein and Blazing Saddles, and on and on and on, and the producers, and so on and so forth. And you've got the heartwarming story of
Balls.
Mel and Carl Reiner, and on and on and on. It's great. But it is not in any way a critical look at Mel as a human or as a creative person. Now, he's a remarkable person, but that doc is not that different from a bunch of other sort of mostly authorized documentaries that recount a life like Eddie Murphy's, who's had a remarkable life and a lot of funny stuff, but don't really dial into like the human part as much. There's more of it here because
Much
Mel's
like
more.
the Paul Rubens documentary that came out last year,
Yeah,
and I
there's a
think
bunch of
it
these that
actually
they don't really they don't dive deep, and they don't.
it
I'm
didn't
sorry.
just like recount his career. They got to like really kind of explore his personality and what drove him, and his
Yeah, but most of these aren't
creative.
doing that. They're not really like, "Oh, he was kind of crappy over here, and this wasn't so great, and he got into trouble with this." Sometimes they'll nod their head over there and then keep walking fast. But so those docs have value, but they're not definitive. And as long as Apatow's documentary is, it's like close to 4 hours, I think. It's not definitive. It's great. Mel's great. I'm glad they did something on Gene Wilder, for instance. That was a very interesting doc. And Wilder was a very tortured guy. I would like to see more docs that are not just sort of, approved by the estate and therefore kind of sanitized a little bit, personally.
In the post-peak TV era, as you pointed out in the issue, it's the third straight year of TV show declines. Luminate, the Penske's research company, tallied 1,122 shows, which was down 11%. So,
A big number.
yeah,
Actually, the bigger number was in broadcast, where it was down 21%. It's like they are not making shows, original series for broadcast anymore. They're just not. I mean, if you drop by more than a fifth in 1 year, it's like, holy crap. They're just going to take the show they make for streaming and run it on a delayed basis on broadcast instead of the other way around. Peak TV's over.
yeah,
Netflix won.
yeah.
Yeah, there's Tracker
just not
and
that.
Abbott Elementary and a bunch of procedurals that Dick Wolf and a couple of others are doing. So, the fact that Pitt, the
Hours of
Pitt,
basketball,
yeah. But I mean, like, yeah, right, a bunch of basketball. That's another thing. So why did you go and get basketball? Because that's going to be better programming, cheaper, ultimately, even if it's a big number, cheaper than trying to come up with shows that wash out. There's an audience that'll show up to watch those games. So that's what they did. But you're right. Sports is eating up more of it.
I poo on TV shows a lot, and I don't want to do it. It's still early in season 2 for the Pit, but I've been a little bit underwhelmed. The focus on the gross stuff, it seems like a little kitschy thing for the creators. It's a little funny and kind of cringy, but I think it's a little overdone. Some of it's a little hokum. I don't know. Have you watched it?
No, we just got through season 1 so far. So
okay, I won't belabor it. What's next?
I think it's fine. It's gonna crank along. Wiley's got a lot of personality and a big fan base, but I think it's telling that Warner Brothers did that for HBO Max. I did 15 episodes or 16 episodes, whatever it was in season 1, and did not release it anywhere on linear TV. So it's, to me, kind of interesting. Same thing with Landman over at Paramount. We talk about Landman. You Don't like their second season either. I'm starting to notice a trend, I might add. But Landman, Paramount Plus first, and not on CBS until kind of after the fact. I think they did end up, they had to do some cleaning up because there's some language that ain't going to fly with Brendan Carr, who, by the way, is now tearing up. We didn't get into this in the column, but he's tearing up this exception that was made for talk shows on equal
Right.
time provisions, going against a fairly well established precedent, goes back a number of years. I'm not broken up by it. I mean, the talk shows are already kind of going away. And talk about softball conversations. Politicians come on to talk shows. They are not generally going to be grilled about their positions on housing or, ICE or whatever. If they got to do equal time, they don't want to do either one. I don't think anybody loses out. No, we don't expect heavy duty policy conversations with, I don't know, the star of this week's movie, but I'm okay with that going away. That's fine to me.
So I thought it pertained to having politicians on as guests.
Yes, right. So if you have
Well,
Bill Clinton on, you got to have whoever he was running
Ted
against.
Cruz.
If you were going to have a Trump on, then you had to have Gavin Newsom or vice versa. That kind of stuff. If they're announced candidates. So
I
in
want to
a
see
campaign.
Stephen Miller on Jimmy Kimmel. I think that would
But
be
that would not
entertaining.
it would be entertaining. Voldemort against Harry Potter, Harry Kimmel. But it would not kick in equal time because he's not an elected he's not running for office. He's running someone's office, but he's not running for office. So
Appointed and not running.
equal time is about official announced candidates for public office.
There's a lot involved. I get it. No, it makes sense.
Yeah. So if you get the Democratic presidential person on, you've got to put the Republican on, and probably
What's the name of that guy on Fox? The late night comedian guy who has they insist is hilarious. You know what I'm talking about, right? He's
on Fox. Greg Gutfeld. Greg Gutfeld.
Greg Gutfeld, right?
It's more like Greg Gutcheck, maybe, but hey, whatever. Yeah. Well, he would be under those same provisions because he's on the no, I take it back. It's only on broadcast. It doesn't affect cable. Cable can do what it wants because it's not under equal time provisions, but broadcast does. So if Gutfeld had, they don't have a late night newscast or a late night show on Fox. They go to bed early. So they don't have that same issue. It's just not a concern. So they put that all over in Fox News. They can have and to their credit, I will say they invite a fair number of Democrats on to talk already. So for what that's worth.
So
they
I don't know if you saw it. It's this giant chart in our newsletter. Media Ocean, an ad tech company, put out a fairly respected report this week that surveyed over 1,400 advertising professionals. What do you ask them? What are you worried about? What are you thinking about? And generative AI was the top concern, but it actually declined. What they're thinking about more of in the last 6 months is TikTok and social video and connected TV by a big margin. These major upticks recently. I thought that was
I think everybody's starting to figure out they can use AI to create stuff for a lot of platforms, and then the question becomes, do I need to be on TikTok as well as, I don't know, the ad-supported Netflix or the ad-supported Paramount Plus? Do I need to be figuring out my YouTube strategy in a different way? And like, what would I wrap it around and who's safe for my brand? Things like that. Starting to figure out that I can use AI to create a lot of advertising that runs across everything and can be programmatically intelligently inserted into lots of things and also output into, older school online advertising with a lot less stress for me than it used to be. A lot less bodies needed, so on and so forth. So I think that it's less scary than it was, except for what happens when AI takes over their brand and puts it into a Sora video and makes them look bad.
Speaking of AI, I don't know what your excuse was, but I got a little busy. I couldn't make it to Davos. last week, which is kind of
Too cold.
unfortunate. They had their big, yeah,
I get chilly quick. So we did our
yeah. They have.
equivalent of this. My spouse and I went up to our cabin in the mountains, and so that was like Davos minus a bunch of very self-important, incredibly powerful people. It was very nice. So
Well, there
there's
was
that.
arguably globally important people. The CEO of Microsoft, Satya Nadella, spoke uh, to the World Economic Forum, and he said something interesting that uh, tech companies like Microsoft are on the clock to create something impressive with AI, something that really moves the ball
Mm,
forward.
yeah,
Otherwise, the social permission to use up so much electrical power. Social permission, I thought, was an interesting phrase, interesting thought.
he was very
But
poetic. He
anyway,
also said, "I love this line. All of us are going to be managers of infinite minds." And that kind of gets it. And about a year ago, I was at the Human X conference and moderated a couple panels in Vegas. And one of them was with this guy, King Wallonius, who had been fiddling during the pandemic and afterward with AI stuff and got a hit on YouTube with this very funny thing that inserted itself into the Drake and Kendrick Lamar fight. And he said he went from being having to generate something and develop it to being more of a curator of lots of different possible directions, and that the AI allowed him to be more curator, or in this case, manager of infinite possibilities or minds. And I find that that's a very different mindset, but also kind of where we're going as these tools get more useful and applicable to our daily purposes, whatever they may be. But Satya, he does get poetic sometimes. Who knew? He does look a little bit like, I got to say, a little bit like a Hindu monk. So,
speaking of enlightened individuals, let's talk about Jimmy Dolan and out of home experiences, which he
yeah,
delved into.
noted enlightened dude and blues guitarist James Dolan and Charles
I've never
Oakley,
seen John Dolan live.
antagonist.
Oh man, I wish Charles Oakley in his prime met him in a stadium tunnel somewhere. That'd be a fun
Yeah,
matchup.
yeah, no one was messing with
I
Charles
don't. I
back
haven't.
then, but that was 30 years ago. But Dolan's interesting because I did a little note in the newsletter about Meta has pulled back dramatically from its ventures into immersive experiences. So it changed the company's name to Meta from Facebook, as we all recall, spent something like $70 billion to build it out and said, now that we've built it, let's go come and play virtual baseball here, virtual reality baseball here. And people said, no, we don't want to do that. So they're cutting about 10% of the
So
reality
they didn't
lab
like
staff.
put the second life.
Well, I mean, they're
They
cutting.
thought the second.
I can't quite hear you, to be frank.
I referenced Second Life. It was the
Well, Second Life, which
startup in the aughts
is
that.
not dead. Second Life's not dead, as last I heard. But he spent a lot of money on it and then pivoted hard to AI. He's cutting 10% of the Reality Lab staff, closing 3 VR studios, but also getting out of the whole work side. So this Horizon Workroom or whatever it was, space and related tools and things are all being sunsetted. So he's just pulling out. So he's going to still have the sort of the fun component of VR, but he's pulled way back and spending billions now, tens of billions of dollars to build out Llama, their large language model, and pay packages for the creme de la creme AI researchers that are valued anywhere between 100 million and $1 billion over time. So he's putting his money over there instead of over here. But the fact that he's doing that says something about the state of things. That being said, Jim Dolan, who put 2.2 billion down to build the Sphere in Las Vegas, reported that, hey, we're going to build a new one in suburban DC, and you can come and you can go watch, like people are doing, the slightly modified Wizard of Oz from 1939 that we now run in the Sphere. $260 million worth of tickets, 2 million tickets worth box office at $260 million, which is like, wow, pretty good. Not so bad.
For an
I mean,
'80-year-old film franchise.
here's the funny part. Wizard of Oz, when it came out in 1939, made $3 million, did not break even. $3 million was a lot of money for a movie back then, but it was so expensive to make that it did not break even. That since then, it's caught up. But it's interesting to see a film like that transplanted into the immersive experience of the Sphere or the smaller Cosm, which is over and down the street from where the Rams play football in
It's
Inglewood.
a tiny
Those Cosms,
plastic.
they wrap around. It's interesting to see maybe this is going to turn into something.
I still need to experience it. That's got to be on my not bucket list, on my this year list, next couple of months list, so that we can catch up there. But
Well, you might want
I
to
am
just go
curious,
over. Yeah. You talk about Cosm or the
maybe
Sphere?
if I saw The Wizard of Oz in full immersive effect, I'd feel different about it. I still remember my mom showing up to me on television and going, "This is great, right? The wonderful Wizard of Oz," and all the music and the dancing and it just nope.
Well, it's
I
funny
never connected
because
with it.
where you live and where I live, we're a mere handful of miles from where they filmed Wizard of Oz at the old MGM studios there in Culver City, where the little people who played the Munchkins infamously stayed in the Culver Hotel, a cool, oddly shaped, like Flatiron building looking hotel in downtown Culver City. They stayed there and I guess had their way with the place. And now you can go to Cosm, which is next door to Culver City, and go see not this, but you can go see if you have the Dosh. You could go watch your beloved Seattle Seahawks play in wraparound Super Bowl stuff. That's going to be an expensive ticket, but you could probably see they're doing some movie stuff there, and they're doing like regular season baseball and basketball, which is and football. They were doing football games, NFL games. I strongly recommend it. It's not a cheap ticket, but it's a cool experience. It's really a cool experience. It's the best sports bar
I'm
ever
contemplating
because
USC Notre Dame was programmed one week, or what about Oregon? I don't remember, but it was. I think the ticket was over $300.
yeah. Well,
It's not
they've
cheap.
only got like the Cosmo only has like 180 seats in the big wraparound. They've got lots of other nooks and crannies and places you can watch it on big screen TVs. Fine, like any bar anywhere. But if you want the dedicated seat with the thing coming up over your head and around to your edges of your peripheral vision, going to cost you. So, but
All
it
right. Well,
is
I'll
it
go
is
make
going to
some
be a
money,
thing.
like,
Go ahead.
and gonna go look at some headlines and maybe do some tweaking. So, uh,
Okay.
so yeah,
Well, let's wrap this
I think we're
puppy
done.
up. I'm David Bloom, co-founder of Next TMT and Next TMT Talks, which you are imbibing as we speak, with my co-founder Daniel Frankel. Every week we come out with a podcast and free on YouTube and available in audio only form on places like Spotify and Apple Podcasts and all the other places you get the audio part of it. And a weekly newsletter that comes out on Mondays, also free. And we are growing nicely. Would love to have more sponsors. You want to subscribe or share it with somebody, please do. Like, comment, all those nice things. If you are stumbling upon this and can't figure out what the hell's going on, but you'd like to know more, go to Next TMT as in telecom, or technology, media, and telecom, nexttmtcom, and sign up. So anyway, with all that, thanks for listening. Love you guys. This is David. Over and out.